artwork in our house, and if we don't do a good job, we'll paint over it anyway. So they let me go into their bedroom with a set of permanent markers and draw on their wall. It was awesome. There was a perfect letter S that was a brachiosaurus beside an erupting volcano. This little girl had somehow managed to draw an almost perfectly straight vertical line at an angle, and I put a Jedi Knight around that standing on a mushroom. And while I was drawing in that room, I thought about Romans 8:28. See, I walk into my room, and there's my wall, and sometimes I get marks on my wall because I don't do smart things. I'm human and I'm flawed. Sometimes I get marks on my wall because somebody who's evil takes a slap at my wall. Sometimes I get marks on my wall just because I live in a world where walls get marks on them. And I stand here looking at the mess. And Romans 8:28 teaches that God says, hey man, give me a marker. And when I hand my marker to God, he makes sense of it. He's not a cartoonist. He paints sunsets and snowscapes and rainbows and ocean floors and the Milky Way at night. So if I can offer you some courage, understand that this thing didn't have a purpose and this thing wasn't caused by God. But if you'll give your marker to God, God can make it make sense. And that's one part of courage. Second part of courage comes from this verse in 2 Corinthians. Paul is an apostle. He's writing to a bunch of people that live in a city called Corinth. And he simply writes these words, 2 Corinthians 16. We do not lose heart. That doesn't mean we don't hurt. It doesn't mean we're not scared. It doesn't mean we're not mad. It doesn't mean we don't get discouraged. We do not lose heart, even though the outward man is perishing. The inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is just for a moment, is working for us a more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. And we do not focus on the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. The things which are seen are temporary. The things which are not seen are eternal. And we know that if our earthly house, this tent, and that's the way the Bible always describes this stuff, is it's a tent, it's not permanent. It's insubstantial, it's weak, and it's temporary. If this tent is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands. For we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality may be swallowed up for life. And God has prepared us for this by giving us his Son and the Spirit as a guarantee. What that teaches is you can look at life in three perspectives. You can look at the external, and that's this stuff. And you can look at the internal, and the internal is eternal. See, when Billy died, he did not become a spirit. He's always been a spirit. It was just in this box. It was just in this tent. And what the Bible teaches to give us courage in days like this is that we don't focus on the external, but we focus on the internal, because the internal is eternal. It lasts forever. It's the idea that, well, when my daughter was little, her hamster died. I've got a certificate from the American Academy of Bereavement. I'm trained in trauma and have a master's degree in psychology. You know what good that does you when your hamster dies? And we sat on the bed and we talked about the dumb hamster. And I said, sweetheart, everything that lives dies. And hamsters don't live as long as dogs. And dogs don't live as long as people, and people don't live as long as trees. Everything that lives dies. Then I read this verse. And I had to call my daughter back. And I had to tell her, honey, the Bible says that mortality is swallowed up by life. Did you hear that? See, we think that being mortal versus being immortal is that immortals don't die and that mortals do. The Bible says that mortality, this stuff, is swallowed up by life.